Hello, and welcome to the Funds for NGOs podcast, the platform where we spotlight changemakers building better futures worldwide. With me today is Dwain Lucktung, Communications Manager for Sand Dams Worldwide, an organization that is building a simple but powerful solution to one of the world's biggest challenges, water scarcity. Sand dams builds low-cost structures that capture rainwater in drylands, providing clean water year-round. They've already reached over 1 million people, reducing time spent collecting water, improving health, and boosting livelihoods. Now, as a WAFA Water, Air, Food Awards 2026 finalist, they're aiming to expand this model globally and impact hundreds of millions more people. Dwain, welcome to the program. We're delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you, John.
And perhaps to kick us off, could you tell us a little bit more about sand dams and the issue that you're working to solve and why it is so urgent in the world today?
Yeah, so Sand Dams Worldwide is a UK charity that's been going since 2002. The challenge that we are trying to address is the severe water scarcity and impacts of climate change in drylands, arid regions of the world where rainfall is erratic, unpredictable, and unreliable. So we know that in drylands, which cover over 40% of the world's land surface and are home to around 74% of the world's poor, are regions where there is as much rainfall as there may be in London, where I'm based right now. But the rainfall, unlike London, where it rains every day, there are long, very long and prolonged drought periods. In fact, in Africa, where we have all of our programs, experience in the Horn of Africa, experienced their worst drought in 70 years in 2023. Our solution is a sand dam, which in its, put it simply, is a concrete wall built across a seasonal riverbed that can capture up to 40 million litres of water that replenishes every rainy season. The water stored in the sand dam is stored safe because it is captured within sand that builds up behind the sand dam wall. Within sand, it is safe from contamination and evaporation, and it's clean water. It meets World Health Organization standards for drinking water. That water is then easily extracted via pipework that is connected to nearby shallow wells and pumps, providing local communities with a lifelong source of clean water that is closer to their home. I mentioned how many liters of water sand dam can hold. That is enough year-round water for over 1,000 people. But we say it's lifelong access because a sand dam can last upwards of 60 years with next to no maintenance and operational costs once built. So
Terrific.
the solution is nature-based, it's sustainable, it's the most cost-effective method of rainwater harvesting in drylands, and it is community-owned. That's one aspect of our work that we would like to share is that we support communities via our local partners. The countries that we work in, we have a local partner on the ground that helps us by working directly with communities. And the communities are at the heart of every project. We do not go into communities and say, you need a sand dam. Often it's communities that are going to the partner in seek of a water solution. Just because in the dryland areas, community, predominantly actually women and children who carry the burden of fetching water in these dryland contexts, they are having to spend up to 12 hours a day collecting in search of water. Often the water that they are collecting is from their nearest river, and then they're going to a scoop hole or a borehole that is dug into the riverbed, and they're collecting what water they can, which maybe just be a few jerry cans of water, 20, 40, 60 litres of water. They take their children with them. The water is often contaminated because it is shared with animals and other people, which means that even though they're getting water, it's not enough, and often it's dirty water. It's giving them waterborne illnesses such as cholera, typhoid, diarrhea. They don't have to take the long walk back home, and they will lack energy to do anything else, including working on their farms. Their children are missing school. So that's the situation communities are in before Standards Worldwide and our partners collaborate with them. But the communities will go to our partner, Arts for Water Solution, and then they are part of the project design, the implementation, the manual construction of the sand dam, and they are trained to maintain the sand dam and operate the sand dam, and they are also trained in climate smart agricultural and land conservation techniques so that they can really use that water to help their farms to flourish by growing drought tolerant trees and crops, do terracing to absorb as much water into the land, and that thus gives them water and food security for life. To date, we've actually supported communities to grow over 1.5 million trees, and there's an increase from 23% of the communities we're working with who are planting trees to 85% who are planting trees.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah,
That is
so
terrific.
there's the water benefits, there's the time saved, there's the health benefits, there's the food security, children educational benefit in terms of children able to return to school because they're not collecting water. I mentioned that women predominantly carry the burden. We do a lot of data around gender equality, the cross-cutting theme across many of our programs, and gender equality training is something that is something that we do with every community that we work in to ensure that women are at the heart of the projects and are the key decision makers and leaders when it comes to the sand dam projects. These farmers, now that they have food and water security, they're able to generate an income. So there's also economic benefit to sand dams. And one thing many benefits of sand dams. It starts with water, but you have all these drop down benefits. Is the environmental benefits of sand dams, because sand dams they recharge groundwater. The area around the sand dam, the soil fertility improves, which enables vegetation regrowth, makes it easier for farmers to grow their crops and trees around the sand dam site. And we have independent research that is available on our website, sanddamsworldwide.org.uk. That shows that ecosystems with sand dams have 2.5 greater times resistance to drought. And there's a regreening effect to sand dams where you can see in the data to show that once barren lands where it was unable to plant trees and crops are now completely flourishing with trees and crops. And I've been lucky enough to see that myself.
Wow, how terrific. And what a perspective on the true dire straits of folks without enough water. Sometimes in the States, they talk about, well, Arizona may run out of water, California may run out of water. And people think, oh, I can't water my lawn or I can't fill my swimming pool. But for those without a clean source of water, it's not just having a glass of water to refresh oneself. It's the daily routine of spending hours collecting the water.
Absolutely.
It's the ability to grow your crops. It's the ability to not get disease or fresh drinking water. So it truly affects their entire life.
Yeah, and we have many upon many reports from communities who state that they no longer suffer from, there are no more cases of waterborne illnesses in their community because of their nearby sand dam. So we always say it starts with a sand dam, but the benefits are long-term, lifelong, and there's a multitude of them.
Wonderful. And it seems like it's such a simple solution, and yet you wonder why it isn't everywhere. Can you talk a little bit about how does a sand dam compare to other maybe water reclamation or water gathering techniques? It sounds like it's got so many different benefits. I don't know why that it wouldn't just be worldwide.
It's, in terms of how it's different is that it is a more cost-effective rainwater harvesting method. The fact that it lasts upwards of 60 years also makes it quite unique once it's built. It's there for generations to use. It has positive impacts on the surrounding environment, which other water solutions may not do. They may just serve the sole purpose of providing water to the community, but sand dams actually completely help to regreen and restore local environments. And I suppose it's not just, I touched upon it before, but it's not just the sand dams themselves, but it's the ethos, I suppose, in which they are built side by side with local partners who understand the local context, who can adapt to the local political, economic challenges that ensure that that sand dam is, going to be invested in by the community. And the fact that they are built hand in hand with the community means that communities have, ownership of that sand dam project. They enhance their skills and their training, so they no longer they're self-reliant. And we have, it's a bit of a internal term, which I'm sure my team don't want me sharing, but there's something called the graduation scheme with communities that when we first go in, we work closely with a partner and our UK-based programs team to monitor and evaluate the progress of each sand dam project, gathering data, gathering research, gathering evidence of the impact, supporting communities on their journey. And then within 5 years, I hope is that they will be completely self-reliant and will not require external support, handouts. And I can speak firsthand of visiting our projects in Kenya and seeing sand dam projects built before my time with the company. So over 10 years ago. And
Wow.
To see communities who are hundreds upon hundreds of trees, fruit trees and crops. Children are
And happy, healthy
excellent
people.
school. It's happy, healthy people. And these are I've been with the organisation for just over 10 years. I've seen sand dams built before my time here. So the sand dams are still serving incredible purpose. In terms of to address your question about why it's not more aware of sand dams.
Awareness, and why, if it's such a good idea, why is it so challenging to spread the word and make it more available worldwide? What
Well,
are the biggest challenges?
I think awareness, awareness of sand dam technology. It is something that we've been, pioneering as a technology and promoting as a technology for over 20 years, but it is still not something that, many international governments, policymakers, institutions have adopted as part of their water management solutions. And it's something that we are working on. And it's the reason why we do podcasts like this is to help spread the word. The challenges is funding. Funding not just for sand dam projects. Obviously, we require funding to help enable the construction of these sand dams, but funding for feasibility studies to look at where where the next sand dams can be built. Then the research and the data. We have a lot of research and data. We have an impact report that outlines over 20 years of data against looking at the impact against relevant sustainable development goals. Again, that's available on our website. But we require more funding to do research and data to build up the knowledge base, to build up the evidence bank, to prove to more people that sand dams is the solution for water scarcity in dryland regions.
Absolutely. And what do you think that donors maybe don't understand about the solution? Is that a challenge sometimes? I know you talked about awareness, but is part of your job also education, kind of explaining to potential supporters what you're doing and why you need their assistance?
Absolutely. I think maybe we have a sand dam animation on our website, which is available. You can visit off our homepage, and it's a 2-minute short film that shows how a sand dam works. But we need to get that in front of more people. So we have assets that we can share that clearly explain what a sand dam is, but it is about getting that in front of people. And of course, sand dams are a long-term lifelong, sustainable water solution. But maybe what some owners may, as you put it, misunderstand is that it takes, as a solution, it takes time and investment. Sand dam, once built, does require 1 to 3 rainy seasons to fill up with that rainwater and fully mature. Mature is the technical term that we use, but that means filled with water. Once the sand dam is mature, as I've said, that's providing millions upon millions of liters of water for local communities, for over 1,000 people year round. But that will take 1 to 3 rainy seasons, and maybe that's where a little bit of misunderstanding may come as well. Is that people may think that once the sand dam is built, the water will be there, but you need this
instant solution.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But what we like to focus on, and we would like to inspire donors with, is that long-term impact of a sand dam. That initial investment will be here for generations to come.
Wonderful. And in addition to the health benefits, you touched on these sociological benefits, especially removing the burden from women in particular, who may be tasked otherwise with collecting the water. In your experience, do you find that it's a relief to the women and it makes for a more healthy interaction between the community members?
I'm not saying in all, but in many of the communities that we support, many of the dryland contexts that we work in, there's predominantly women who carry that burden. Often, it is children as well, because the women are having to look after the children, and children have to go with them, especially if they're away from home for 12 hours. So, yeah, we see a real impact in terms of gender empowerment in communities, and women becoming leaders, the voices of their community. And we have got, again, data in our impact report that shows that there is a 112% increase in the number of women on programs who feel hopeful for the future, and an 85% increase in the number of women who feel confident after taking part in participating in a sand dam project. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just anecdotal when I go in and I'm visiting these communities, and you see how confident and how happy they are, how healthy they are, how they're introducing to their children who are now able to go into school, and how proud they are of their farms, of their household, of
That's terrific to
of their
hear that someone
livelihoods.
is proud of their community, proud of their home.
Absolutely.
How wonderful. You mentioned about being able to visit and even being able to visit communities where the sand dam was constructed even before you arrived. I know there must be language barriers, but have you ever had a chance to talk with someone
Yeah.
who has benefited from a sand dam?
Yes. I mean, we all have part of our team. We have programs who regularly go out and visit the projects as part of the monitoring, evaluation with our local partners. I've been Kenya a number of times. I mean, if I could share one anecdote.
Absolutely.
Well, I always remember 2016 is when I joined Sand Dams Worldwide. Within about 6 weeks, I was on my first field trip to meet communities and gather content, stories, videos, photos. And I met so many community members. And the language barrier is not an issue because our local partners help with that. Some will talk English, but if whatever is a local language, our partners who are based in the country, then they'll do the translation for us. So there's never an issue with that. And I always remember the first community member that I met was a 40-year-old woman called Faith. She had 4 children. Her community had already built their sand dam, but she told me of how before the sand dam project, she used to spend 10 hours every day collecting water with her children. She walked 4 hours to the nearest river, then lined up for 1 hour to 2 hours because so many community members were coming from far and wide to use these scoop holes and these bore holes in this riverbed. she could only collect 2 jerry cans, which equated to about 40 liters of water. And that was to serve her household of 5 people. So if you do just the maths on that, you're looking at about 8, I think, if I do my math properly, 8 liters of water per day. And that's for everything. That's for drinking. That's for sanitation. Her children missing school either because they had to go with her to collect this water. But even the water that she collected, number one, it wasn't clean water. It was giving them all stomach aches and illnesses, and they were in and out of hospital. And the water that the children did have was not enough for them to bring to school. So in some of the schools, some of the regions that we work in, it is a requirement for school children to bring water to their schools. But the 8 liters is not enough. So the children at times are being sent home from when they could go to school, sent home because they weren't bringing enough water. Farm was,
through no fault of their own.
Through no fault of their own, of course. Her farm was non-productive, so she wasn't producing enough food for her family, and she was just tired. She was too tired to do anything once she got home. It just affected every aspect of her life. Her and the community heard of another community sand dam project. Through that, they got in touch with our partner. Our partner went in, they gave them, a demonstration of how sand dams work and the benefits of it. We funded the sand dam project, which Faith helped to build with her bare hands. And now, from 10 hours, she has access to water 10 minutes away from her home. She has
That's terrific.
She has more than enough water than she needs to drink, to clean, to tend to her household. And what was really lovely was that she introduced me to her children who had returned to school by the time I had got to the community, and they were just happy children, and they're in their school uniforms, and they had time to play, because time to go to school and time to play, and it cemented my my inspiration, support. I really was inspired by the organization before I joined, but you seeing it firsthand, I'm here 10 years later, I'm still working for organizations. So obviously it made a lasting impression.
Absolutely.
Faith Sand Dam is still going. We still get stories from her community, even though they no longer need our support. They are, they're doing great, and their farms are flourishing. And I think it resonates with me today as much as it ever did, because I've now got a 4-year-old daughter, I've got a 1-year-old son, and I do the school runs in the morning. After this call, I've got to go pick up my daughter from school, and I can only imagine. I can't imagine how challenging, how impossible it would be to have to pull my children out of school, because I had to bring them with me to source water, and the water that I would source wouldn't even be good for them. So that's just one story. It's the first story that I ever covered, so to speak, or reported on. But it's one of over, we support over 1.2 million people to benefit from sand dams. So hopefully, with more support and exposure like this, we can there'll be millions more stories like Faith.
Wonderful. What an inspiring story, and how your solution was literally life-changing for that woman and that family. Just amazing. Dwain, if people are interested in learning more about sand dams, or your organization in particular, is your website the best resource?
I think that'd be all our information is on there. Our impact reports on there, our annual reports on there. How you can donate is on the website. Our contact details are on the website. So I won't reel off a load of email addresses and numbers here, because it'd be hard to follow. But if people would like to find out more, they just visit sanddamsworldwide.org.uk. They'll find out all the information they need on us who can support the work that we do.
Excellent. We've been talking today with Dwain Lucktung, Communications Manager for Sand Dams Worldwide. What an amazing organization. Dwain, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing more about this amazing solution that's doing good in the world.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the support.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, and we look forward to talking with you soon on the next podcast.